this debate has to be had. Historically, a lot of decision making has taken place behind closed doors. We want that out in the open. We want the issues to be put on the table. We don't want it to be just an Eskom decision or a Department of Public Enterprise, Department of Energy. We feel the stakeholders, all of them, have a lot of value to add to the process. So we need to have these debates out in the open, that when policymakers are making those decisions, they actually have all the facts at their disposal.
We talked a lot about a mix of renewable energy, a partnership. But in that mix, there's the question of who's going to lead that process. Is that solar power? Is that nuclear? We talked about 10 years down the line from development. Wind energy seems to be the one that's ready to go, that can fill that gap immediately. Is that the vision?
There are two elements to your question. The first is, which was implied but not asked, is who's going to lead that? That's private sector, which was it's a very important point. That's off the country's balance sheet, and private sector will lead that. In terms of who in the private sector will be leading it, you have to look at various filters right now. You have to look at the fact that we are a country that's going to be very sensitive to price, and you have to ensure that, because we have an issue with security of supply, whatever technologies you choose have a long-term proven track record. Wind is very suitable for that in terms of the renewable energy feed-in tariff. It's got one of the lowest tariffs. It has no feedstock, so you can plan its price path. It's pretty easy to predict. So we think at least now in the short to medium term, wind would lead that. Possibly in the long-term future, solar, if the technology cost comes down, solar will be a significant player. But at least for the next 5 to 10, 15 years, wind should be the dominant player based on reliability and price.
Ask about the general public as a stakeholder.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I ask about the consumer and this entire equation, I just want to understand in terms of renewable resources. There seems to be, and it came out again, that there's this sinister agenda in terms of resources. But at the end of it, it still seems that the policy government hasn't caught up in terms of, you've got all these stakeholders talking to each other, but the crucial element of policy, regulation and government seems to be the one that doesn't understand the value or doesn't understand the importance.
Yeah. The question of resources is clearly the best thing would be for government to do their own studies with experts, local, international, to decide what resources we have. As the South African Wind Energy Association, that's what we've gone and done. We've taken independent studies and we've taken studies from our members. We've aggregated those and come up with a picture of what we see is viable for South Africa. You can do as much as 70,000 megawatts of installed capacity from wind. We're asking for 30,000 because it's a more realistic. So the questions on, is there a wind resource, is there a solar resource? We could analyze that to death. The reality is, from a wind perspective, at the moment there are 10,000 megawatts under development in this uncertain environment. The results from those developments show you that there's a resource. So the resource is not really the question. What's more important for South Africa is the resource of the grid. Do we have the grid capacity to take all these new projects? Will government plan in parallel with what private sector is doing to make sure that we can actually harness those resources? We're going to have wind and sun for many years. You look at the weather reports, there's wind every day. There's sun generally every day.
Very quickly, the consumer in the role of all of this. At the end of the day, the consumer still needs to be informed. There still needs to be information that's sent out to the consumer. The consumer, in actual fact, if you think about it, is probably the tail end of this discussion, because you have all the power plays at the moment. How important is the consumer for you right now?
Well, for us, the consumer is very important. I mean, we're clearly promoting a wind agenda, but we're looking at it from a risk in a portfolio. If you look at that portfolio risk and you go to wind and you know that it's going to be R1.25 increased by CPI for the next 20 years, that protects the consumer, because for a consumer you have to plan your budgets, etc. If you know for the next 20 years the price path will be smooth, that helps you. The real question is who's engaging with the consumer, who's educating the consumer. In my opinion, not really. We're educating them that electricity is now expensive. That's educating with what in essence is a stick. You're showing them that prices are going up. You're telling them that we must be efficient, but sometimes they're getting mixed messages. They read about stuff in the press where they see preferential tariffs to big smelters, and they question that. I think by virtue of our history, we have pressing problems that consumers are faced with, and government is trying to educate them on. Power is pressing, it affects your pocket, but I don't think there's been much education or information given to consumers.
Final question. How do we move forward? A robust debate today, policy making in September somewhere. How do we move forward to make sure that wind power as a resource to the consumer, to the South African, is not a 2015 thing, but a little bit sooner?
We move forward by a first step, making sure that the debate continues and that there's robust debate around it, that it filters to the policymakers, they make the appropriate decisions. The decisions have to take into account the balanced portfolio, not just focused on lower cost, looking to the future. So it moves forward to a resource plan now that is robust, done in a transparent manner, is defensible, which is the most important, that when it comes out, that you don't have everyone up in arms. We've bought into the process. We can't say no one asked us. And we have to support it, and then start doing what our real job is, go and build those wind farms, because we're all just waiting for the power purchase agreement to do that.